There's a moment in every person's life, a quiet, almost imperceptible moment where time seems to pause, not because the world stops turning, but because something inside you wakes up. You look around and wonder, is this all there is? You've been sprinting on a treadmill, chasing numbers that never satisfy, drowning in to-do lists that leave your soul emptier by the hour. You've been taught that more hours mean more income, more output means more success, more hustle equals more worth. And so you run, harder, faster, longer, until your knees ache and your spirit burns out. But here's the truth, no one tells you in this modern rat race. You were not born to hustle for scraps. You were not designed to trade your essence for someone else's approval or paycheck. You were created to build, to create, to lead, with purpose. And wealth, real wealth, is not the byproduct of burnout. It is the child of vision, the companion of conviction. The wealthiest people in history, not just in dollars but in impact, didn't chase money. They chased meaning. Carnegie didn't wake up for coins. He woke up for the steel that built nations. Edison didn't lose sleep for a bank balance. He chased light, literal light. And Disney? He didn't mortgage his life for checks. He mortgaged it for a mouse and a dream. You've been lied to, conditioned to believe that productivity is the same thing as progress, that busyness is a badge of honor, that the more you grind, the more you'll shine. But there is no glory in exhaustion. There is no trophy for burnout, only regret, and a haunting question whispered too late. What if I had followed purpose instead? We are not here to play small. We are not here to survive. We are here to build. And building begins not with your bank account, but with your beliefs. It all begins in the mind, because before you ever construct wealth with your hands, you must first sculpt it in your thoughts. Every empire, every invention, every revolution began as a whisper in someone's soul. That whisper became a thought. That thought became a belief. And that belief, it became the blueprint for destiny. But most people never make it past the whisper. Why? Because they've been trained to distrust their own imagination, to silence their gut, to ignore their intuition in favor of someone else's metrics for success. They swap purpose for profit and call it being responsible. But there is nothing responsible about killing your potential. Earl Nightingale once said, "We become what we think about." Let that sink in. Not what we work on, not what we wish for, but what we think about. That means wealth begins with clarity. Clarity of thought, clarity of intention, clarity of self. If your mind is fogged by fear, by lack, by desperation, you will only create more scarcity, no matter how much you hustle. That's why the richest minds in the world aren't the ones working the most hours. They're the ones thinking the clearest thoughts. They know that clarity is currency. So ask yourself, right now, when was the last time you stopped everything and asked, what do I actually want to build? Not what would impress people, not what makes the fastest cash, but what calls to me. What do I ache to create? What would make me weep with pride to leave behind? That question is the beginning of purpose, and purpose is the ultimate wealth magnet. Look at every true titan of history. They weren't addicted to the hustle. They were possessed by a vision. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't march for money. He marched for a dream. Steve Jobs didn't invent for market share. He built tools to empower the individual. Their wealth wasn't their goal. It was the result of something deeper. When you lock into a vision bigger than yourself, your work takes on another frequency. You no longer need to be pushed, you're pulled. You don't burn out, because you burn for something. And that kind of fire, it attracts everything money pretends to offer. Joy, freedom, impact, legacy. But vision without discipline is just fantasy. The world is full of people with dreams. It's full of notebooks, journals and vision boards collecting dust. What separates the legendary from the forgettable is action. Ruthless, consistent, unapologetic action. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. He didn't sulk, he sketched. He sold his belongings. He pitched again and again and again and again, rejected, ridiculed, mocked, but he kept moving, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Discipline is what transforms dreams into deliverables. It's waking up when the world sleeps, not because it's trendy, but because your soul won't let you rest. It's doing the unsexy, invisible work when no one claps. It's building systems that don't depend on your hustle, so you can scale with grace, instead of collapse from pressure. Discipline is not just about waking up early, it's about knowing why you wake up at all. And when you marry that discipline to purpose, you become unstoppable. You stop chasing money, and start attracting it. You stop hustling for attention, and start commanding respect. You stop playing the short game, and start playing the infinite one. Because here's the truth, money is a terrible master, but a powerful servant. And when you lead with purpose, money serves you. It flows to you, not instantly, not without effort, but inevitably. Why? Because the world is starving for leaders who move from purpose, not ego, not fear, not hustle culture, purpose. And when you become that person, you don't compete, you create. You don't chase trends, you transcend them. And still, even with the vision, even with the discipline, there will be storms. There will be seasons when the dream feels distant, when the bank account doesn't reflect your effort, when the people around you don't understand why you're choosing the narrow path. That is when you must remember, you are not hustling for dollars, you are building for destiny. This is not about income, this is about impact. This is not about stacking bills, it's about stacking bricks, legacy bricks, future bricks, soul bricks. And those who endure, those who stand tall in the storm, are the ones who remember why they began in the first place. Stay rooted in your purpose, and no gust of doubt, no wave of rejection, no drought of reward will break you. You will bend, but you will not break, because your roots run deeper than money. They run into meaning. Resilience is not a talent. It's not some genetic gift handed out to the lucky few. It is forged, hammered out in the furnace of failure, loss, disappointment, and long nights when no one is watching, no one is clapping, and the only thing keeping you going is the whisper inside that says, "I will not quit." You see, the average person chases comfort. The extraordinary soul chooses growth, and growth is always uncomfortable. It demands a shedding, a breaking, a letting go of everything shallow in exchange for something sacred. The world will try to convince you that discomfort is a sign you're doing something wrong. But the truth is, discomfort is confirmation you're stepping into the person you were meant to become. Thomas Edison failed over 10,000 times before he gave the world the electric light. Imagine that. 10,000 attempts, 10,000 ways that didn't work. But he didn't hustle for dollars. He had already made a decision, a vow between himself and the future, that he would bring light to darkness. That vow, that purpose, gave him a resilience that money could never match. Because here's the paradox of wealth: the more you chase money, the more it runs. But the more you chase mastery, meaning and mission, the more money chases you. You don't need more hustle, you need more alignment. And alignment is not passive, it is an active daily commitment to living in integrity with your purpose. That means saying no when it's hard. That means turning down the quick money if it leads you off course. That means building slow if it means building right. It's turning your back on the dopamine drip of vanity metrics and running headfirst into the fire of long-term impact. Because impact pays dividends that money never will. Let's talk about gratitude. Not the shallow social media kind, not the forced affirmations. I mean real, raw, bone-deep gratitude. The kind that humbles you to your knees and expands your heart beyond what your mind can comprehend. Gratitude is not just a feel-good emotion, it's a magnetic force. It tunes your mind to abundance, and when you are tuned to abundance, you begin to create it, not out of desperation, but out of overflow. You start to see opportunity where others see obstacles. You start to attract allies, resources, connections, because your energy is no longer coming from fear but from fullness. Gratitude isn't about being content with less, it's about honoring what you have, so you can handle more. If you can't be grateful for the $100 you have now, you won't respect the $1 million when it comes, because wealth without gratitude is just possession. It's hollow, it's never enough. But when gratitude becomes your foundation, wealth becomes a tool, not a trophy, and purpose becomes your compass, not your excuse. This is why so many people with money are still poor, because poverty is not just in the bank, it's in the mind. And so many people without money are already rich, because they are building from something real. You are not chasing numbers, you are creating a legacy, and a legacy requires a different frequency. So let's go deeper. Let's talk about adaptability. Because the world you're building in is not the world your parents knew. This is not the era of factories and pensions. This is the era of reinvention, the era of agility, the era of creative destruction and rebirth. And if you want to build purpose-driven wealth, you must become a master of evolution. You must outgrow your own ego. You must learn, unlearn, relearn, constantly. You must be willing to pivot without losing your core, to innovate without compromising your soul. Henry Ford revolutionized transportation, but when the world began to change, he resisted innovation. He clung to what worked once, and that resistance nearly crushed him, because stubbornness, in the wrong season, becomes a death sentence. Your ability to adapt is your survival kit, but not just adapt for survival. Adapt to lead, adapt to innovate, adapt to serve your purpose in new, elevated, more powerful ways. Don't be the person who builds one thing and defends it to the grave. Be the person who builds, grows, and transforms with every new chapter. Because your purpose isn't chained to a product. Your wealth isn't tied to one stream. Your mission is alive, and you evolve with it. And if you're going to evolve, truly evolve, you need to fall in love with learning. Not the kind of learning they handed you in school. Not the memorization, the regurgitation. I'm talking about active, soul-deep, curiosity-fueled learning. The kind of learning that lights fires inside you. The kind that makes you dangerous, not because you know everything, but because you never stop becoming more. Read the biographies of the world's wealthiest visionaries. What you'll see is not a pattern of genius, but of obsession. Obsession with learning, obsession with understanding, obsession with growth. They devour books, they study competitors, they watch trends, not to copy but to connect, to discern what's next, to evolve their message, their product, their influence, and they never stop. Why? Because the person who stops learning has already chosen mediocrity. The mind that stops growing starts dying, and the entrepreneur, the builder, the visionary who stops learning, stops earning. The mind is your greatest asset, not your product, not your service, not your hustle. Your mind. Invest in it, feed it, protect it. Because in a world of noise, the clearest thinker wins. In a world of speed, the deepest learner thrives. In a world of superficial wins, the student of truth builds unshakable wealth. So now, after all this, ask yourself the question that only you can answer. What am I building? Not just for today, but for the next 10 years, the next 30, the next generation. What seeds am I planting that will outlive my hustle? What vision burns so brightly in me that I'd pursue it even if no one ever clapped? Because when you answer that question, really answer it, you unlock the kind of energy that no external motivation can match. You stop playing to win approval. You stop building just for escape. You stop grinding just to make ends meet. You begin to build something holy, something aligned, something eternal. And here's the sacred truth. The world doesn't need more people chasing paychecks. It needs more people answering callings. It needs more souls on fire with vision. More builders of beauty, not just buyers of time. More creators who don't just want to make a sale,
They want to make a dent in the universe. You were not born just to pay bills, and then quietly vanish into the system. You were born to shape the very system, to rise above it, to question it, challenge it, and redesign it, so it serves humanity, not just commerce. Because when you operate from purpose, you stop being a pawn in someone else's game, and you become the architect of your own. Let that sink in. Every time you say yes to a dollar that doesn't serve your soul, you reinforce the lie that you must shrink to survive. But every time you honor your mission, even when it's hard, even when it's unseen, you reclaim your power, and you begin to bend reality around your values. That's what the true wealth builders do. Carnegie didn't just stack steel. He forged an empire with intention. He said the man who dies rich, dies disgraced, so he gave nearly all of it away, not because he hated money, but because he understood its highest use. Walt Disney wasn't chasing net worth, he was chasing wonder. He believed in building the happiest place on earth, even when the banks laughed, when his own team doubted, when failure knocked again and again. But purpose doesn't flinch when fear barks. Purpose keeps walking, even if it has to crawl, even if the path is uphill in the dark. Because when you walk with purpose, you cannot be stopped. You might be slowed, you might be bruised, but you will not quit, and eventually, the world catches up to your vision. Now listen to this closely, because this may be the most important line of all. Wealth is not what you have, wealth is what you can't lose. And the truth is, you can lose the job, you can lose the house, the economy can crash, the algorithm can change, but you cannot lose your purpose. You cannot lose your identity when it's rooted in truth. You cannot lose your inner economy when it's fueled by passion, vision, wisdom, and grit. Because you are the asset, not your brand, not your business, not your audience. You. The most powerful investment you will ever make is the one you make in becoming a person of value, not popularity, not profit, value. Because when you are a person of value, you become irreplaceable, you become magnetic, you become inevitable. That's when doors start opening without you even knocking. That's when people seek you out, not just for what you do, but for who you are. That's when your work becomes a magnet for wealth instead of a hustle for survival. And the world needs more people who've woken up to this truth, because we've had enough of shallow success. We've had enough of burnout, sold as ambition. We've had enough of soulless marketing campaigns, masquerading as movements. We are ready, starving, for leaders with depth, builders with conscience, entrepreneurs who lead with heart. And that can be you, but only if you're willing to do the one thing most people will never do: surrender the hustle, and pick up the torch of purpose. It won't be easy. There will be days when the old habits call you back, where comparison whispers, where fear of missing out tempts you to copy someone else's blueprint, chase someone else's lane. But you must remember, comparison is the fastest way to destroy your clarity. Your path is sacred, your calling is custom built, and the second you trade it for imitation, you abandon the very thing that makes you powerful: your authenticity. You don't need to be louder than the crowd, you need to be clearer than the noise. You don't need to be everywhere, you need to be rooted in one place long enough to grow something that matters. Trees don't flourish by chasing sunlight, they flourish by planting deep roots and reaching for the sky from the same soil. So plant yourself, choose your mission, like your life depends on it, because it does. Choose your values like they're non-negotiable, because they are. And then build, slowly, bravely, boldly, brick by brick, day by day, not for the applause, not for the likes, but because you've looked at the world, seen what's missing, and said, I will be the one to bring it. So now we arrive at the summit of this truth, not the end, just the beginning of a different way of living, a different way of earning, a different way of being. You are not here to hustle blindly in pursuit of digits on a screen. You are here to awaken to a higher truth, that wealth is a byproduct of purpose fulfilled, that money is not your master, it is your servant, that you are not here to chase it, but to channel it, to direct it like water, to flow through you into the world as impact, as service, as creation. And the irony is, when you stop needing it to prove your worth, it comes to you with less friction, more flow, because the universe does not reward desperation, it rewards alignment. The grind ends where grace begins, the hustle fades where mission takes root, and the man or woman who wakes up each day and says, "I will build something that outlives me," that person cannot be stopped. So today decide, no more hustling for dollars, build purpose-driven wealth instead, and let the world watch in awe as you rise, not just richer, but freer. The world has sold you a lie for so long, it started to sound like truth, that your worth is measured by output, that speed is the same as progress, that if you just hustle hard enough, you'll eventually find peace. But here's the real truth, the kind that hits the bones. You cannot hustle your way to freedom, because hustle without direction is just glorified escape. Busy is not the same as built, and tired is not the same as sacrifice. Let's be clear, work is not the enemy. Purposeful work is sacred. Discipline is holy. Effort matters, but effort without aim is erosion. And right now too many people are eroding, grinding themselves into dust for goals they never chose, sprinting toward a finish line they never questioned, trading their soul for salaries, likes, algorithms, attention, and calling it success. You can feel it when you meet them. A quiet emptiness behind the hustle, a hollow ache behind the achievements, a gnawing hunger that no bonus check can feed. And that's because success without meaning is failure in disguise. It's the house with no home, the trophy with no triumph, the applause that fades the second you're alone in the dark. So I'll ask you now, not softly, but boldly, because you need to hear it without filter. What are you building, and why? Because if the answer is just money, you're building a prison with gold bars. But if the answer is impact, integrity, mission, legacy, love, then you're not just building wealth, you're building a life worth living. And that's what this whole thing is about. It's not about escaping work, it's about making work mean something again. It's about bringing your full self to the table, about pouring your soul into something real, not just to take, but to give, because that's when you tap into the deepest current of all, the divine flow of contribution. And that's where real wealth lives, not in what you accumulate, but in what you activate in others. Think about the names that echo through history. Lincoln, who led with moral courage in a time of division. Edison, who failed 1,000 times just to bring light to the world. Hill, who studied the giants of his time to teach others how to think. Disney, who turned imagination into reality, with nothing but a dream and a deadline. They didn't just chase paychecks, they didn't grind for likes, they devoted themselves to something bigger. They didn't just earn income, they created impact. And that's the legacy you must seek, the legacy that doesn't need a spotlight, because it shines from within, the kind of wealth that makes you rich in spirit before you're rich in dollars. And make no mistake, the money will come, but not as your god, as your tool, not as your identity, as your amplifier, not to define you, but to serve what you've already defined as true. When you move from this place of grounded, purpose-driven clarity, you stop chasing and start magnetizing. People feel it, they trust you, because you're not trying to sell them a product, you're inviting them into a mission. That's the shift, that's the evolution, that's the wealth path. Very few will walk, because most are still asleep, sprinting toward noise, ignoring the quiet call of their soul. But not you. You're awake now. You see it clearly. This isn't about money. It's about meaning. It's not about grinding. It's about growing. It's not about proving. It's about becoming. So let this be the day you drop the shackles of hustle culture. Let this be the hour you stop asking, how fast can I get it? And start asking, how deeply can I build it? Let this be your turning point, from scattered ambition to unshakable intention, from chasing numbers to chasing North Stars, from being busy to being built for something. Because if you want to be truly wealthy, you must be willing to do what the shallow cannot, to delay the dopamine hit, to stay in the trenches when the crowd disappears, to work on yourself as hard as you work on your brand, because the person who is aligned with purpose will outlast, outbuild, and outperform the one who's only motivated by money, every single time. Not because they're smarter, but because they're rooted. And when storms come, and they will, it's not the most talented who survive, it's the most anchored. So anchor yourself, in truth, in mission, in value that cannot be priced, then build, slowly, sustainably, intentionally, brick by brick, word by word, decision by decision, until one day you wake up and realize, you didn't just create wealth, you created freedom. You didn't just build a business, you built a life, and in doing so you gave others permission to do the same. That's the ripple effect of purpose. It doesn't just change your bank account, it changes the world. So here you are, standing at the edge of everything you've known, and everything you could become. And the question is no longer, how can I make more money? The question is, what am I willing to give my life to? Not just your time, not just your energy, your life, because you only get one, and it's too sacred to waste chasing crumbs when you were born to bake the whole loaf. Stop hustling for dollars, start building for destiny, and never again forget, the most valuable currency is not in your bank, it's in your being. And that is true, unshakable, purpose-driven wealth. Now go build it.